All right, guys, so let's start. All right, so a couple of PSAs, couple of announcements basically. So in IT are always looking to make improvement, and this week we have a couple of improvements that we are going to make. Number one is, remember guys, we talked about seniors giving presentation every Sunday. And then, I kind of revisited. So we're going to move away from that, and multiple reasons behind that. The number one reason is, well, while this was really beneficial to the seniors, however, what we have seen that, and we got a bunch of feedback as well, right, from new joiners, that they're understanding my messages clearly than students from last batch, and which I understand, and which was one of my concerns to begin with. And we're moving away from that, and we had opened the platform for seniors with group studies. So they're going to spend a lot of time in group studies, giving presentation and teaching and everything. So I will continue teaching on Sundays, full 1 hour, and without any distractions. So that's one thing. And next thing I will show you in paper in a second. Saima, you had a correction?
Assalamualaikum, Mama. Yes, I had a question. The members you just mentioned, what team are they in? I missed that.
Hazards, team hazards.
Oh, okay. All right. Can we get the name so me or Brother Sahad, anybody can join them?
Yeah, so you have the Excel sheet is there. I'm going to post it
okay.
in the leaders group so you can have it. The Excel sheet is there, team Excel sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, all right, so let's start, guys. I'm going to start with sharing my screen, and we can take it from there. Okay, so where do I go here? Okay. All right, so this is, I'm going to present the main document, and we'll continue on this journey. So as you guys know, this is our main document, our IT solutions document 1. And last week we were learning, Redwood, if you can take care of, select someone about meeting minutes, if you can handle that in the background, would be nice. So we were learning about STLC, and last week we talked about this diagram. We went over this diagram, STLC diagram. If I look at this one, and by now I'm pretty sure everybody's good with this diagram, right? And looking at this, right, we are sitting in system testing phase. This is where we are sitting, system testing phase, and this is where we spend most of our time. This is where we do our testing. And I always said, right, testing is a process-oriented job. So we start our testing process here, and we're going to learn about it. And coming into this document, we went through STLC, then we talked about waterfall methodology. We talked about this methodology within STLC. We talked about waterfall. We talked about V model, agile, and then the rest. Now, obviously, we cannot and should not learn all of this, and it's not necessary. The market is all about waterfall and agile. So we learn about agile, and we're going to learn about, we learn about waterfall, and we're going to learn about agile, right? So another change I'm making to kind of improve our process. So usually we would learn waterfall, and then we will learn agile, and then we're going to continue with STLC and other things. But now I'm going to switch it up a little bit, and I have done a lot of thinking about this, how to better approach this. So instead of learning agile, we're going to continue with STLC, right? This STLC. Since we already know how to build a software product by learning about this STLC, right? We learn about STLC, who sits where and who does what. We talked about system testing phase, and we know we're sitting here, but we still don't know what do we do here, right? So usually we come back here and talk about it, but before we move on and talk about Agile, I want to finish this and understand what exactly we do here. And once we understand what we do here, it will make more sense to us to understand, like, whether we should do Agile or waterfall or something else, right? So, so we're going to talk about it now. And so if we go back to our main document, right, STLC document, it talks about what happens in requirement phase. We already know what happens in planning phase, what happens in design phase, what happened in development phase. We already know it's in the document. And then this is where the STLC is, where we sit and we start our testing process. And if you look at this, there are going to be a lot of big wordings. Don't worry about it. We'll explain everything, right? So first phase, in STLC, and I'm going to show you side by side this document so you can relate to it. Yeah, so we are talking about this only, right? We are talking about this phase. This is where we do all of these things. So this is what we're talking about. System testing phase. In testing phase, what do? We start analyzing and understanding the requirement. And requirement, they could call it SRS or just a simple requirement. So in STLC, the very first thing we do is we start understanding and analyzing the requirement. And where does the requirement comes from? Anyone knows where does the requirement comes from?
The SRS?
Yeah, we know SRS is the requirement, right? But where does it come from?
From customer client.
If you look at the chart, if you look at the flow diagram, which phase does it come from? No, understand the question.
User requirement.
Again, guys, understand the question. Which phase does the requirement come from?
Planning phase.
Planning phase, right? So from here, we plan, the business analyst plans the requirement, finalize it, and then it gets sent to everybody, right? Hey, this is the final version of the requirement. Look into it, understand it. So they send it to everyone, and we start, as soon as we get this requirement, what do? We start analyzing the requirement right here. First thing, read through the document, understand it. We start analyzing the requirement document. Once we feel that, okay, we spend, depending on the size of the requirement, we could spend couple of hours, we could spend a couple of days, we could spend a couple of weeks. It depends how big the requirement is and what type of environment you're in. So here you're analyzing and understanding the requirement, and then you create a test plan, right? So you create a test plan. Just like in life, everything requires a plan. For you to attend this class, for you to be committed to this school, this organization, and the class, there was a plan behind it. There was a thinking process behind it. If you want to build a computer, you need to have a proper plan. If you want to build a house, you need a proper plan. So just like in life, everything requires a plan. For your testing, it requires a plan too. So right after understanding, analyzing the requirement document, you're going to start planning. As a tester, you will start planning, how are we going to test this application, this software, this code? So you're going to start planning, and this planning, you're going to put it in a paper so it is there for you, for your teammates, and for everybody else. So this is your second phase, creating test plan. Then you create test cases. So test cases are nothing but the steps, the things you do to achieve the testing. So test case would be step-by-step process. For example, if you're going from one place to another place, whatever the transport or anything that you would do, all the effort, buying from renting car to driving car to buying the gas, everything you put in a piece of paper. So that's nothing but your test cases. So test case would be same thing, right? If I was going to test an application, for example, what do I have to do? Let's say you want to test facebook.com. what do you have to do? You have to go to www.facebook.com. You're going to write it in a piece of paper. Then what do? You enter username and password. First, you need to log into that application to test it. You're going to put that credentials there, and that's where you're going to put it in a piece of paper. So things like that. Now, probably you guys can see when I say QA testing is a process-oriented job. Everything that you do, you'll put it in a piece of paper. Sometimes it might sound silly, but that's what it is. You need to document it, that this is a process, right? So after creating test plan, you're going to create test cases, and you will create RTM. RTM is nothing. RTM is short form is RTM, but the full form is requirement traceability matrix. So what it does is it makes sure that you have written enough test cases for each of the requirements. It's nothing but that it's a document. It's where you're going to map test cases against requirement, making sure that you have written test cases for the requirements. So once the RTM is done, right now, 99.9% of the company, they don't care about RTM and you don't need to make it. But when you're learning, you need to understand it. So once the RTM is done, you're going to go ahead and set up your test environment. Configuring or setting up test environment is nothing but making sure that you have everything that requires for you to do your testing. For example, if you want to test an application, first you need to make sure you have application in place. If you do not have an application, how do you test it? So that it's like a checklist. You want to make sure that you have a checklist in place before you go into testing. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to test this application. Do I have my application in place? Is it available for me to test? That's a check. Do you have a computer in place? That's a check. Do you have the testers in place? How many testers do you need? Do you need one tester? Is he there? Do you need 5 testers? Are they there? So things like that you need to have in place. You need internet. Do you have internet? Everything, right? Everything you need to test an application that needs to be there. You need the document, requirement document. When you're going to test this application, you're going to have to look at that requirement document to compare. So you want to make sure before you go into testing, you're as part of test setting up, test environment setup, you need to make sure that your requirement is in place. You need to make sure that your test cases are in place, your test plans are in place. This is nothing but a checklist of everything that you need to perform your testing, whether if it's in place or not. But once you have configured successfully your environment, then you're going to go into testing, test execution phase, and that's where you're going to do your testing. When you test, you're going to start finding issues or bugs or defects. So you're going to see, you're going to execute, you're going to find defects, and you're going to log defects. You're going to find and log defects, and you're going to track those defects to make sure that you know where they're going and whatnot, and who's fixing it. If it's fixed, then you're going to test it again to make sure it's fixed properly. Things like this. Once this is a big step, finding defects and logging defects. Once all of this is done, you're going to create a report, analysis report, to explain how the testing took place, how everything went, was there any issues, if there any improvement requires, things like this. So this is, now if you look at this, right, look at this, the highlighted area, this is nothing but your system testing phase. Does this make sense? Do you understand now what happens in system testing phase?
Yes.
Cool. Now, any questions, guys, before we move on? So now, again, when you look at the STLC diagram, you look at where you sit at testing phase. And when you look at the testing phase, what do? You just not testing only, you're doing a bunch of things, and it's nothing but STLC. The phase where you're sitting, right? It's called STLC phase. STLC stands for software testing lifecycle. This is this whole thing right here. It's a life cycle, your testing life cycle. So for the interviewer, you can tell them, right, in system testing phase, we start our test STLC process. STLC process is everything combined. Everything you see from here to there is nothing but STLC, right? Any corrections?
Question.
Yeah.
Yes. So the last step, the TAR, is that basically the previous 7 steps altogether? What happened throughout? Is that the report for it?
Yeah, basically, this is the analysis report to explain like how testing took place, what were the challenges, how can we overcome those challenges in the future releases, next cycle, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
This is like final report, something?
Yeah.
Can you go over a test case one more time, please?
Yeah, so test case is, let's say you're testing an application. So test case is your step-by-step process to test an application. So for example, today, if I say, so this is Orange HRM website, right? If we say, can you please test Orange HRM website? Just do a smoke test. Just ensure that this URL is working. All you have to do, just go into, I'm just telling you the requirement. All you have to do, just go into this application, make sure this application is up and running. So how would you do that? So now, before you go into testing, before you go into doing anything, you want to go through your STLC process. And STLC process is understanding requirement. When they give you a requirement, it's very simple right now. All I'm saying, go to orangehrm.com, just make sure this website is up and running. That's all. That's your test. Now you have done your analysis of the requirement. You understand how it should be done. Now you're planning. In your planning, you're going to talk about when and how to test. So that is done. Now you're going to do your write your test cases. So now you're going to design. What are you going to do? You're going to write in a piece of paper saying your first step, what your first step would be. Your first step would be going and opening a browser, whichever the browser it is. You're going to write it down. Open step 1. My first step, open the browser, and you're going to open the browser. So whichever, this is Edge browser. So you're going to say open the Edge browser. That's your step 1. Step 2, enter the URL. This is what you're going to write down. It might sound silly, but you're going to understand this as we go further in this course. So your second step, step 2, enter this URL, which you have done. What is your third step? Click enter button. That's what you're going to write down in the piece of paper. And there is a format, and we will go through it. You're going to say, hit an enter button, which we did. That's your third step. Your fourth step would be verify this Orange HRM application is working as expected. We're in the fourth step, and we're in the application, and we're verifying it is working as expected. That's your test cases, and that's how you write your test cases.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, guys?
Can you please go over on create RTM?
This is a big topic, and leave it alone for now. We would have dedicated session for each one of them. And today's plan is to go over this one. We're going to explain this. What is requirement? How does requirement look like? How does requirement look like in different environment? And we'll give you a demo on this one. And once that is done, so this is a big process. STLC is a big process, and you need to understand each and every one of them. How and what to do. How it is and what to do with it. So these are everything you are seeing here is a giant topics, and we're going to go through it one by one. RTM, we will have a session. We'll show you what exactly RTM looks like. And once we explain this, you're going to go ahead and create an RTM as well as a homework. So we'll do that. And right now, if you do not understand test cases, if you do not understand requirement, you won't understand RTM, because RTM is nothing but putting this one and that one together.
Brother Kadir.
Yes, brother.
Just to clarify, right? So to create the difference between creating tests and creating test case. Creating a test is how and when to do the test, and when you create the test case, it's a step-by-step process, right?
And when you're creating tests, you're talking about creating test plan, right?
Yeah, is how and when to do the test, and then creating test cases, the step-by-step process of creating the test, right?
Yeah, test plan is
Okay.
little bit, not little bit, lot bigger than, how and when. It has a lot more to it,
Okay.
risk assessments, test entry criteria, test exit criteria, test schedules, who are the involved people in. This is pretty much entire plan of how testing will take place. And these are pretty much every step you will take in your testing. These are the key differences.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's go dive into requirements. So today's topic is understanding requirement, right? Now, before I go into that, are you guys able to understand like where are we in terms of SDLC and where do we sit and what we need to do? These are the key three things that you need to understand before we move on. So this is, if we look at SDLC, right? We're here in SDLC. So we're here in SDLC, right? If you look at this SDLC face, we're here, right? We are sitting here. But we are communicating with developers, we are communicating with design team, we are communicating with planning team. We're not working in isolation. We are constantly communicating with them. We do not communicate with UAT folks at the early stage, but when we deliver our product, we do communicate with them as well. So this is a team game, basically. Everyone needs to understand where they belong and what they need to do. And we belong here in system testing phase. And in system testing phase, we do our testing. And testing has a life cycle, which is called STLC, software testing life cycle. As part of system testing life cycle, we're gonna very first step that we will take is to understand our requirement. So let's go look into a requirement. Requirement, IT industry is constantly changing, right? So I'm going to start by explaining a requirement from golden days, and then we'll show you how the requirements are evolving in recent days and how they look like. Okay, so look at this. This requirement is for this application, Orange HRM application. As you can see, this application is pretty big. It has many pages and many tabs and links and navigation and all of that, right? If you look at this one, so if you look at this requirement, this is pretty old. It has 21 pages. So ideally, and initially, requirement it looked like this. In a waterfall environment, this requirement is for waterfall related application. They would create a requirement document in Word format, and they would put everything in one place. For example, those of you do not understand what is a requirement. Requirement is pretty much how and what you want from an application and what application should do. For example, right, your first requirement would be like this page, landing page, and its functionality. So there will be a document talking about this navigation bar. There will be a document talking about each subsection in the bar. Everything that you see, it will be written in a piece of paper, and not only how it looks, also its functionality. When you click on it, what it should do, where it should take you, and when it takes you to another page, how that page should look like, and its functionality. So everything should be written. There should not be anything that you don't have to assume anything when you go to work. It's pretty straightforward. Everything is written. You should not do anything from your mind. If you feel like, okay, this should look like this, you should ask question, hey, I think this is going to be great if we do this, but you should not go and implement it according to how you think is right. Everything should be in a piece of paper. Everything should be written in a requirement form. And then only you go ahead and work. So if we talk about, this is a very big application. If you look at it, like, like so many tabs, like if I click on each one of them, it will take me somewhere. So in terms of requirement, writing this requirement, understanding this requirement, and creating test plan, test cases, and building this application and testing this application, I'm looking at least 6 months, at least 6 to 8 months of work. If this application did not exist, for a team of people to build this application, at least 6 months to build an initial version of this application, at least in a waterfall environment. And notice I'm keep mentioning waterfall environment, and we'll talk about it later. So let's just see how a requirement looks like in a waterfall environment. So usually it would look like this, and they will have initially they will have a cover page, and cover page will talk about the project and requirement version. So this is the project, right? Or an HRM project, and they're talking about project functional requirement specification version 1.0. So this is the initial document, first document they have created. So they have named it 1.0. If they make any changes, they will make the version change too. If they make like minor changes, they will change this to 1.1. If they make major changes to the requirement, they'll make it 2.0, right? So, or this could even be right 1.1.0. So usually it's 3 digits, and 3 digits are better. Minor changes, first number you're going to change from minor changes. Medium changes, you're going to change the second number. And if you're changing something major, you're going to change the very left number. So depending on how you're changing the requirement, the document, basically this is the entire requirement, and this is the document. If you make any changes to it, you would have to change the version number as well. So people would be referring to the latest version of the document. Because let's say tomorrow you change something here, right? So this is your login page. So this is what you said. My login page should look like this. They should have like, this logo and this panel, login panel, and then this is the this is the input field, right? Input box. That's where you enter username and password, and then login button here. So let's say tomorrow you want to change this login button to submit button. Instead of login, you want to put this as submit button. So you modify it, change it. Now your document should start changing the version number here. Should start from here only, right? I would at least change this number. So when someone else looks into it, they're not going to look into version 0. They're going to look into version 1.0.1. So they know, hey, latest changes in the latest version. So, right. So this is the cover page, and obviously requirement version is there. Document version is there. And then the table of contents. This is where you have that. This is the navigation panel. Basically, if you click on it, if you want to, let's say you want to go somewhere directly, you can click on it, it will take you there. And then introduction or purpose of the document. This is how it usually is. It talks about the purpose of the document. They're going to talk about like project and whatnot, project overview. This section will talk about a brief description of the project, basically. Architecture should be here. And notice you can see, right? This is the document of the entire application in terms of requirement. So here they're already talking about initial requirement. There will be many requirements. They're talking about login page. This is the very first requirement they're talking. First they gave the document. This is the design document, basically. This is how it should look like, the logo and everything in the panel. And the system should use ESS, user account, that has been created for nature. And so this is for the admin part of application. So, and you can see admin and admin. So admin will have access to this one. Let's continue. So these are mini requirements. You can see 3.1 my info module. They're talking about another requirement. And they're talking about another requirement here. They're continually talking about my info module. So this is another requirement and sub requirement, and you can see it by the numbers. 3.1 is my info, and within that subsection 3.1.1, and this is the layout of the requirement design document. Is talking about what information should be there, what are the different edit fields and everything, and here they're talking about everything in details. What are the different fields should exist? Then the photo section is, they're talking about this photo, and this is the requirement 3.1.2 photograph, and they're talking about this browse and upload functionality here. And show me, okay. They're talking about the maximum size that application should allow for that photo section to be. Now, continuing in this section, contact details, and this is where you enter your information and see how they're giving very detailed information about your requirement. This is very clean. This is very good work when it comes to requirement. Everything they have, you see, like everything, not only they gave you a design document, they're writing down each and every field, how that field should be. Emergency contact details. Then save. Okay, so once you enter all of this, they're talking about clicking on the save button. And once you click on the save button, it will give you this option, add or delete. Continuing. So there's so much information here when it comes to requirement. So dependence, then the next section will talk about dependent, and you have save or cancel option. And then once you save it, it's going to be here. The next requirement is talking about all of this. And the next one is job related. So they're talking about these different fields should be there in this requirement. And you can see all of this here. And each one of them, guys, you know, some of them are drop down, some of them are checkbox, some of them are input box. Each of them comes with unique challenges when it comes to testing. Like, you know, if it's a drop down, you need to focus on it. What are the things it should be including, and is it how you should select it? Can you search it? Is a multi selection option or whatnot? All of these things you have to think as a tester. When it comes to date field, right? There should be a boundary, like, you know, in terms of how far back should you go and how much forward can you go, things like this. And as a tester, you need to ask those questions, right? So I have a join date field, right? You know, when does it start? When does it end, right? How far back does it takes me? Should it takes me? Should application allow me to go back? Is it 10 years, 20 years? How much forward can it take? Join date should not be forwarded, right? Join either present current date or 10 years back or 20 years back, whatever that is, depending on the company, how long how long they've been in existence. So things like this, you need to ask questions and understand, and based on that, you know, you create your test cases. If it's an input fill box, for example, at the very beginning, you have seen username and password, and those are nothing but input box. Right now, you need to ask questions and understand, like, okay, when it comes to input box, what are the limits? How much characters that input box should allow? What are the length? What are the characters in terms of supporting character? Is it just is it allows all kind of characters? Is it English only? Is it should it allow numbers also? Should it allow special characters? If so, like, what are the different ones? So many things you need to understand and plan for when it comes to testing. It's not easy, So then we're still talking about same sections requirement. These are subsection of 3.1, right? You can see 3.1.8. We're talking about salary, and these are the fields. Then reports, report 2, and then qualifications. Now, yeah, just understand, like, how a requirement should look like, and we'll continue to learn about it. Yes, Brother Rafi.
Okay, when we are asking about someone about how many characters it should have, who you asking? BA?
What do you think?
I think it's BA. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So requirement comes from business right here, right? Everybody owns something. If requirement related questions, we're going to ask whoever is sitting in the planning phase, we're going to ask them. They're the owner of the requirement. If something testing related questions, they will ask us. If something development related questions, we're going to ask them. So everybody owns something. Okay. So then we have checkbox. So we need to understand, like, how we're going to test it. First of all, I see hyperlinks here. Is it clickable? If we click on it, where does it take me? If we're checking those boxes, can we do multi-selections, or are we only selecting one or the other? So testing wise, you have to have those kind of mentalities when you're testing an application. Okay, and this is obviously an attachment. Now we need to understand what are the different types of documents is allowed. What are the different type of documents can you and should you attach, and what are the things this application should not allow you to download or upload. So you have to do negative and positive scenarios here. Like, for example, if they're saying only documents are allowed, it should only allow you to upload document. If everything else is not allowed, then you need to upload other things to see what kind of behavior you see from that application. All right. So membership, and I'm going to try to go a little bit fast so we can talk about this. So you see, like, up until here, this was 3.1, and then its subsection. And now here we're moving on to 4. So 4 is a entirely different section. It's a sign-off document. So here, these are the requirement. And that's it. This is pretty much sign and date and sign off of the document. So this document, this requirement document, is for this application right here, Orange HRM. But this entire 21 pages pretty much talking about one section only, just one section. And if you look at this one section is my information related functionality. I don't think I can find it because this application has been, but this is a real application. This has been modified so many times. Yeah, I may have to sign up and go into it and to be able to find it. But what I'm trying to tell you, like I said before, if we were to build this application, it would take us at least 6 months for a group of people to build this application. Here, this requirement you're seeing, this is only for one section, maybe one of those tabs. Once you sign up for, you will find out. Now, similarly, this one will have similar document. This one will have similar document. This one will have similar document. But when it comes to working in waterfall, they would put everything in one document. And this was everything initially, right? This application got built in over time. Initially, that's all they built. Everything in this document, I'm talking about 10 years ago, they built this application. Whatever was in this document, they only built that. And then after that, obviously, they added on top of it and everything. So basically, this 21 pages long document is explaining how that application should behave and what is expected of this application. And now if they were going and writing a requirement for this application, this would be at least 80 pages long, at least 80 pages long. So that's a requirement in a waterfall environment. Any questions?
I have a question. Depending on the IT company, this same document, it can be in agile form.
Yeah, we're going to talk about agile. Agile usually does not create this kind of document. So when we get to agile, we're going to talk about it. Agile document. Agile does not create this kind of document.
Okay.
This is waterfall.
All right.
Okay, so now let's look at other documents. So let's look at other real-time requirements, right? Let's look at that. And so this is the process everybody was following 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And this was the standard. First, when we get a requirement, when we get an order, let's just say it like this. When we get an order from a client, we're going to understand the entirety of it. Then we're going to put everything in a piece of paper, just like this. And everybody's going to finalize it and understand it and work on it. And 6 months later, we have a product. And this was working out fine 15 years ago. But now no one has 6 months to wait. No one has, industries are changing every day. Right, the things you liked 6 months ago, the things make sense to you 6 months ago, it doesn't anymore. By the time we see a product, we already want to change it. We don't, that is old school. We do not need that anymore. So that's why requirements are much shorter now. If you look at this simple requirement, and I'll let you work on this requirement. So this document is much shorter. If you look at this, it's talking about RQ stands for requirement 001. One requirement for the sign-on page. User shall be able to navigate to the home page and sign-on page. They're talking about, this is another application, market tours, demo application. For this three requirements in this page only, and they're talking about there should be a sign-on page right here. And once you're in the sign-on page, when you click on it, it should allow you to sign into their application. And then once you sign up, so for the signing, you have like this kind of characters are allowed in the username and password field. So this is straightforward and easy to work. Like to build this one, you don't need 6 months. You probably need 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe two weeks. 2 weeks, fine. So this is how agile requirement looks like, and that is how waterfall requirement looks like. So this is the difference. Agile will break it down into small pieces, make it easier, make it accessible. So what do you think if you're a company, if you're owner of a company and you give an order, and would you rather receive it in 2 weeks, or would you rather receive it in 6 months or 8 months or 12 months? I mean, everybody would want something in 2 weeks. I want to see it already. And then after second week, I see it. If I don't like it, I'm gonna make more changes to it, right? Let's say I looked at it and it's good, it's working, but let it work in production, but let me go fix it in the background for the next release. So this is more of agile type of requirements, smaller, simpler. This is waterfall.
Question.
Yeah.
I think agile is more secure than waterfall. Am I right?
Secure.
Like creating password, different type, different password. Like it's not like similar. Like
No. Waterfall agile does not have anything to do with security. It has more to do with the way of their work to achieve something. And the main differences are waterfall is a lengthy process, and agile is accessible, and it is done in short period of time. Sadiq.
Brother, when we are in waterfall methodology and we got some bug at the time of testing, who gonna report? We report it, and will it goes back to development phase, or will it go to next step to UAT phase with the bug report? I mean,
Very good question, brother. Hang on to your question for another 3 weeks, and then we'll answer that 3 weeks later, because you're talking about things are very, very advanced for this group. And once we go through the process, STLC process, you will get the clarity and it will make sense. And we'll show you the process of reporting bugs and everything you're talking about here. And we're only here. So it doesn't make sense now talking about this. It will take a long time to explain. All right, so as we're in the requirement, right, and I'm showing you different requirements, and let me continue on the requirement and show you different types of requirement. When we understand different type of requirement, it will be very, very clear. So you saw this requirement, this big requirement, 21 pages long, and we went through it, you understood, which is very, very good. Then you saw another requirement, looks like this, nice, simple, easy, short, to the point. So you understood this, and then let's look at more requirements. So now people and the industries are moving away from physical document. They're moving where to? They're moving into ticket-based requirement. Ticket-based requirement is nothing but a physical tool, right? An application that they use to create requirements. So there are different applications or tools. We call it tools because, you know, in the industry, we have certain way of talking and addressing things. So if this is a tool, right? If you look at this is nothing but a Jira tool, project career IO. I mean, you would call it an application, and you will not be wrong. But when in the industry, we'll be calling it a tool. It's nothing but a Jira tool, and you'll get access to this and you'll work on it. But you guys are seeing my screen, right, with the application Jira?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So either if it's Jira is a tool, or it could be, we were using what, Asana, right? Asana, or is sorry, right here. So Asana, this is another tool. It could be this one. It could be ALM. It's similar to this. Another tool, it could be monday.com. You guys know Monday. It could be monday.com. It could be anything else, but Jira is the most popular one when it comes to working in a project or project management tool. So we'll be working on this type of application. Now, now people are moving away from those document, you know. Now, if you look at this, so I'm going to show you. I try to show you something straightforward, something simpler, so it will make more sense. Email integration, sign up, activity, forget password. Okay, so this should be relevant. Forget password. There you go. Okay, so these are requirements. So now people are moving away from the document. Now people will be using this type of tool. And let me zoom in a little bit more so you can see. Now we want to build a functionality in our application for forget password functionality. We did not have it in place. So what we would do, just come and create a ticket and say, okay, we want to build a forget password functionality, and this is the description. In the description, what I'm saying, as a user, I want to be able to reset my password by clicking the forget password or forget reset password link, and it's talking about, you know, successfully sending an email. things like that. So that's my description, right? This is my section of the requirement, right? The main section of the requirement. This is my summary. I'm saying forget password functionality needs to be built. We don't have it in place. This is a description. User should be able to reset the password. This is my acceptance criteria, like how to get there and what exactly has to be done. User has clicked on the password link. When they enter the new password, then it will allow them to re-enter password successfully to reset the password. You guys all know, right, how to reset a password. You need to click and forget password and then enter your new password and then reset it successfully. So this is a simple, straightforward requirement written in a Jira application or a Jira tool. This is much more advanced, and this is what people industries are accepting, adapting, and working flawlessly in. So now let's go back one more time. So now, so see this one giant document, and ideally for this application, this should be 80 pages long. Within this 80 pages, all the requirement of this application is written here. Now, let's say I have a question about this functionality, this image and telephone. So telephone functionality of this image. I want to ask them, like, what is the format? Do you allow international numbers? If so, how should we? How many characters should it allow, and how should we display it, and things like that. Now, in this 80 pages long document, where do you think I'm going to post this question properly and have them address it and in an organized manner? Is it going to be possible? It could be, but I ideally no. Maybe you have to go create a separate document with all of your questions, and you're going to say, hey, I have questions about this section, and you're going to write down like a question about this section, and then you're going to say about telephone functionality, and then you're going to say, okay, this is my question. So that's a lengthy process, and often this kind of communication gets lost and confusing. Rather than that, if we have a ticket created like this, all you have to do, go to this ticket and comment here, directly comment, hey, Edgar, okay, someone posted this. Do you have an idea how this works? So you can say, hey, like, if you have a question about any of this, you can just tag this person and say, hey, can you give me clarity on this? And this is so simple and clean. And you can track your questions and everything here. So that's why, like, industries are moving away from the paper documents. They're using tools, and tools allows you to do so many more things. And requirements are very, very straightforward and easy to understand, easy to navigate, easy to get clarity on, and things like that. So what do you guys think? You have seen three sets of requirements. What do you guys think? Do you guys have clarity on the requirement? Which one do you like the most? Which one makes sense to you the most?
So I like the most Jira. I work in the engineering industry, and we using this Jira in there.
Nice.
So whenever we hire somebody, if we need equipment for him or her, like computer or any laptop or anything, so we use Jira to put the request in there.
Nice, yeah. Ticket system, right?
Yes, and it's pretty good and very effective.
Exactly, nice.
Yeah.
So
instead of sending email and putting the request for that, so we had this guy, we need equipment for that or laptop for him, so that email can get lost, or we forget about the email, but we have a ticket in there, so it's easy to track and it's easy to use.
Yeah, each of the ticket has reporters, has assignee. You can assign it to the individual that's supposed to be responsible for. You can assign it to them. You can, put in different statuses. For example, like, backlog is where the initial stage is, and then from there in progress, and then done, and things like that. So this is so much better, a lot more fun, clean. Any other questions, guys? I'm going to stop recording and then we'll continue conversation. Yeah, go ahead if you guys have any questions, suggestions.